smartphone? Have a phone?
Maybe you can put your screen and him together.
I don't think so.
Yeah, something like that.
In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, one God, Amen. Glory be to the Father, and to the Son, to the Holy Spirit, now for into the age of all ages, Amen. We're going to start by playing a little game. So if you all take out your phones, and hopefully they're connected to Wi-Fi or they have data. You all have phones or don't have phones? We have phones? Okay. Okay, and are all the families here? I'm seeing probably all the wives are here. Maybe your husbands aren't here, so we'll play individual. Okay, so go to this website. It's kahoot.it. KAHOOT.it. And it's going to ask you for this PIN number, so you can put in this PIN number. I'm going to play a game. It's kahoot.it, not .com. Okay, we're starting to get some people in here. KAHOOT.it. That's the PIN number, yes. 916381. Yes, so put a nickname, yeah. Or anything. Anybody still trying to log in? To connect? KAHOOT.it. And the PIN is 916381. Everybody's in? Okay. Okay, so we're going to start in 3, 2, 1. The idea of this game is that you're going to see a question on the screen. You're going to have 20 seconds to answer it. And the way you answer it is that you're going to have 4 options on the screen, and they correspond to 4 different colors, and you're going to have those 4 boxes of these colors on your phone. So you can answer by clicking the box with the color that corresponds to the answer that you think is the right answer. Okay? And there's a score for each point, for each question. The faster you answer, the higher the score will be. Okay? All right, so the first question. Are you ready? All right. Apologetics. Apologetics is the study of what? So up here, This is the question. And down here, these are the answers. Oh, read the answer, sure. Red is pillow making. The blue is underground geologic formations. The time ran out, so it gives you 20 seconds, and then it moves on to the next question. I'll read it. I'll read the next one and all the answers. Okay. Okay. So someone is winning. Whoever has the nickname someone. Okay. How old was Christ when he first taught at the temple? How old was Christ when he first? The red, he never taught at the temple. The blue, that's a trick question. Jesus taught at a synagogue. The yellow is 40, the green is 12. 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2. Alright, most of you got it right. Good. Sam is winning. Alright, the next one. Who were the disciples who witnessed the transfiguration? Red is the disciples of Emmaus. Blue is Peter, James, and John. Yellow is Moses and Elijah. Green, the disciples were asleep. Two, one. Good, most of you got it right. Very good. Sam is winning again. Alright, which of the four Gospels have the most chapters? Which is the longest Gospel? The first one, I never read the Gospels all the way to the end. Yellow is they're all very long. Green is the Gospel of Luke. Which is the longest Gospel? Alright, so Sam is still winning with MZE, close second. Alright, who were the first people who heard about the nativity of Christ? Red is those who were listening, blue is the angels, yellow is the innkeeper, green is the shepherds in the field. Very good. Alright, Magid is on top now. Magid, and followed by Dudu, followed by FM. Sam is in 5th place. Alright, how many epistles did St. Paul write? How many epistles did he write? 10, 11 is blue, 14 is yellow, green is what's an epistle? Most of you got the right answer, 14. Dudu is winning. Very good, 3,400 points. All right, next one. Who are the church fathers? Who are the church fathers? I'm not sure what's happening here. For some reason it crashed. And the winner, I believe, was Dudu. Whoever had Dudu as the name won. And who are the church fathers? We can skip straight to that question. Yes. No, it's not going to let us. It's okay, next time. So here's what I wanted to talk to you about this morning. So thank you all for participating. We all have our phones with us, correct? Ever leave home without your phone? Never. And if you leave home without your phone, how do you feel? Lost? Okay. Any other feelings? Anybody ever panic? Anybody have feelings of anxiety? Right? What happens when you see your phone and the battery's in the red? Panic, like I have to conserve battery. I'm not going to do any extra stuff. I have to find the charger, I have to find the battery pack, whatever, right? It's very important. And that's why I wanted to talk to you about this morning, about addiction. Addiction is something that's very common, much more common than we think. We're all addicted to something on some level. And some of these addictions are benign, but some of them are very serious. And some of these addictions affect our youth very profoundly, in a way that we all need to be alert for. But before I start, just in case somebody leaves early before the end of the presentation, because I'm going to repeat this at the end, promise me one thing: whatever we discuss today, when you go home, do not do anything for 24 hours. Don't do anything, don't change anything for 24 hours. Okay? Don't, hear some of the stuff we're going to be saying and then panic, and then go home and just unplug everything and, take all the phones away and call the internet and cancel the internet, cancel the TV. Just for 24 hours, just observe and see if some of these patterns we're talking about, you see them in your own home, in your own family. Okay? In 2011, they updated the definition of addiction. Okay? That's from the American Society of Addiction Medicine. Addiction is a primary chronic disease of brain reward, motivation, memory, and related circuitry. So it's a disease in the brain, and it affects these areas. The areas responsible for reward management, for motivation, for memory, and related circuitry. Dysfunction in these areas in the brain, in these circuits, leads to characteristic biological, so it manifests when these areas are affected. The manifestations appear biologically, psychologically, socially, and spiritually. This is reflected in an individual pathologically pursuing reward and or relief by substance use and other behaviors. So the definition expanded to include not only substance abuse, but behavioral addictions. Behaviors. We can get addicted to certain behaviors. Behaviors like phone usage, internet usage, online pornography, shopping, eating, all these sorts of things, all these sorts of behaviors, they can become addicted. And looking at these things within an addiction framework helps us deal with them. Rather than just saying, it's just a bad guy, he went online and he saw some pornography and then that's all there is to it. Stop being a bad person, right? There is more to it than that. Addiction affects many people. Those who have not experienced substance abuse firsthand are likely to have family member or friend who has experienced them. Most people start, after a surgery or an accident or something with some sort of medication, prescribed medication, and then after the pain has gone, they become dependent. They're still dependent and they still take it and they continue to take it. Okay. Addiction affects men and women of all ages, but the rates are 2 to 3 times higher in men than women. Higher in men than women. And the highest rates of addiction are among which age group do you think? Which age group do you think would be most vulnerable to addictions? Teenagers, right? 15 to 24. 15 to 24. I believe most of the teens in this retreat fit in this age group. Stigma marks substance use problems. Okay? It's still good. If I point at someone, if I introduce to you someone, you all know each other, but if I brought someone with me and said this person came with me, his name is so-and-so, and he's a drug addict, immediately you'd have thoughts about this person that are not very nice, they're not very good, kind of negative. This person must be not a good person, morally deviant, he's probably has very weak willpower, he's not a smart person, doesn't make good decisions. There's stigma attached to addiction. There's stigma and prejudice and all sorts of negative connotations attached with addiction. And that's part of the problem. And it drives people to hide their addiction. So if someone has a problem with online pornography, chances are they don't want to come out and say this to anyone, right? Even in confession, it's very difficult for someone to come and say they don't want, for example, Abuna to think of them as a bad person. So they don't want to come and say, Abuna, for example, to punish them. Or if their parents find out, they don't want their parents to punish them or think they're bad or change their image in front of their parents, right? It makes them hide the problem or pretend that it isn't there. At a time when they need a lot of support from the family, from the community, from the church. One simple way you can help is the way we talk about it, is that describing the person not as an addict, but as a person with an addiction problem. Another way is to understand that addiction is a complex disease caused by many factors. And some of these factors we are responsible for as parents of teens. Okay? And when it comes to addiction, no one is special or unique. If someone engages in an addictive behavior, if someone is under certain circumstances, they're very liable to fall into addiction. No one is special, no one is unique. No one can come and say, I'm just going to try Tylenol 3 for a couple of weeks and see how I feel. I'm not going to get addicted. I can quit anytime. Smoking, I'll just try one. I can quit anytime. Marijuana, I'll just try one. Everybody says you can't get addicted to marijuana, right? I'll just try one. I'll just try, right? You're not special, you're not unique. You do it, you're going to get addicted. Addiction involves substances or behaviors. And people are starting to realize that treating behaviors under the addiction framework is helpful in treatment. Drugs. We have, I'm sure, people here from the healthcare profession. We have doctors, we have pharmacists, nurses. So what is a drug? The Greek word for drug is pharmakon. We get pharmacist from and all these other words. And the word for drug means medicine or poison. The same word used for medicine and for poison. Drugs under the right circumstances are beneficial, and they're designed for their beneficial aspects. Doctors prescribe medication under certain conditions. You take 2 of these every day and no more. You take it with food. You take it before you go to sleep and things like that. If we take it outside of this, we can start to experience some of the negative aspects, and they essentially become poisons in our lives. Defined more generally, a drug is any substance used to change mood, state of mind, or state of being of the user. The American Medical Association, AMA, defines drug abuse as the ingestion of psychoactive substance that is capable of producing physical or psychological dependence in an amount and frequency likely to result in overt intoxication. So it causes something that causes dependence. Okay? Not everyone that takes cocaine or heroin or any of these kinds of medications, because they're available as medications, and some of them are used as painkillers, for example, and not everybody that takes it becomes an addict, because they take it under the care and guidance of a professional, and it doesn't lead necessarily to addiction, but it's when they take things into their own hands and when they go off prescription and they just do their own thing, that's when you have problems. Said another way, when a continued use of a mood-altering substance means more to the individual than the problems associated with such use, that person can be described as abusing drugs. So if someone keeps taking it, despite the fact that there are negative consequences, they can see that it's affecting their lives, their health, their families, their loved ones, it's alienating everyone around them, and they keep taking them, this person is abusing this drug. And like I said at the beginning, whenever I use the word drug, we're including in that substance abuse and behavioral addictions as well. Drugs are classified, specifically talking about substances, depending on the way they affect the central nervous system. Okay? The brain, the nervous system, everything. So the way they affect it, whether they're depressants, opioids, hallucinogens, stimulants, or psychotherapeutic agents. So depending on how they affect the central nervous system, the drugs are classified. In a recent survey with teens approximately in that age group of 15 to 25, they were asked these questions. And some of these questions, might be kind of like a shock. The first one, do you remember a time before the internet? If I ask you this question, I'm like, yeah, of course. But for them, 70% said no. And it's most likely because that family in particular probably didn't have internet subscription in the mid to late 90s. And by the time they got it, the kids had it. But it's not because the internet wasn't around. How much time per day, on average, do you spend on your smartphone or tablet? 20% said 2 to 3 hours a day. 40% said 3+ hours. How well does this describe you? I spend more time on my phone than face-to-face with people. 40% said somewhat. 50% said sort of true. Okay, 50%. How many hours a week do you spend on social media? 50% said 4 to 8 hours a week on social media. And I believe it's closer. It's closer to the 8 than it is to the 4. 30% said 8+ hours a week on social media. When spending time on social media, do you ever feel lonely or left out? Most of our kids have, on average, 300 to 400 friends on Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, or any of these social media platforms. Ever feel lonely or left out? 40% said that they feel often left out or lonely. Do you take your smartphone to bed? This is a serious question. To bed can be anywhere where the phone is placed within arm's reach. So maybe you put it under the pillow, you put it beside you, you put it under the cover, you put it on the night table, anywhere within arm's reach. 90% said yes. Do you check your phone last thing before you go to sleep? First thing when you wake up? Both or neither? The answer was 100% yes. Okay. Of those 90%, of course. Okay. This survey, how recent do you think this survey is? Very recent. Matter of fact, it was done this weekend. It was done yesterday. It was done here. Okay. Smartphone, social media. Who had kids that were in grade 3, grade 4, around 2007? And maybe going into high school, kids going into high school around 2010. That range. 2007 is when the iPhone came out. Okay? And 2010 is when the iPad came out, and the tablets and all that other stuff. Okay? This caused a huge shock to teens everywhere, because they started to get access unprecedented before, never known to human beings before, access to all sorts of things and in all sorts of ways, and people really had no idea the repercussions, but they were careful. Some people, Steve Jobs, for example, the one who invented the iPhone, wouldn't let his kids play or use the iPhone for more than a certain amount of time, maybe 30 minutes a day, and never ever take it in their room. Never ever take it to bed. And that's the guy who invented it. Smartphone addiction tests. These exist today because people are realizing that our teens, and even us, we exhibit symptoms of addiction to smartphones. When we look at our usage of smartphones, we can tell there's a lot of parallels between those habits and addiction. Okay? This is one such. I'll read you some of the questions. I would feel uncomfortable without constant access to information through my smartphone. I would be annoyed if I could not look up information on my smartphone when I wanted to. Being unable to get the news on my smartphone would make me nervous. If I could not use my smartphone, I would be afraid of getting stranded somewhere. Okay? If I did not have my smartphone with me, I would feel anxious because I could not instantly communicate with my family or friends. If I didn't have it with me, I would feel nervous because I would not be able to receive text messages or calls. I would feel nervous because I could not know if someone had tried to get a hold of me. Okay? I would be uncomfortable because I could not stay up to date with social media and online networks. I would feel anxious because I could not check my email messages, and on and on and on. Our teens today are more comfortable in their bedrooms than in a car or at a party or anywhere else in a social setting for that matter. Okay? Physically, they're safer than teens have ever been in the past. They spend more time just either sitting at home or just sitting somewhere with the phone or the tablet, and they're living their lives in the virtual space. But psychologically, they are extremely vulnerable. The smallest thing can crush them, can destroy them. Rates of depression and suicide have skyrocketed since 2011. Social networking sites like Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, they promise to connect us to friends. But what's coming out of the research is that teens in this generation, they are lonely, they are disconnected, and they are unhappy. Depression, loneliness, sleep deprivation, cyberbullying, all these things are just skyrocketing. And why? Simply because there is a new element, there's a new player in the game. Okay? It's easy to just blame everything on smartphones, technology, social media, and just shut down everything. But when we start to look at trends, we start to see what changed in the past 10 years and what changes have happened in terms of trends in the way people feel, suicides and homicides and things like that. People are exhibiting all of these symptoms of addiction. Okay. No one plans on being an addict. No one wakes up in the morning and says, today I'm going to accomplish my goal of becoming an addict. One thing that makes change very, very difficult is that the immediate effect of substance abuse or behavioral abuse tend to be positive. Okay, so they check their phone, they see these likes on a picture they posted or on something they put online, immediately they feel good. Okay, they go online and access pornography, immediately there's a hit of a drug called dopamine in the brain. It makes them feel good. Okay? And they may even feel that they have more confidence and may temporarily forget about their problems. Okay? It provides temporary relief. Okay? This could be, you have no idea how strong of a motivation this is. This can drive people to do all sorts of things, all sorts of behaviors, just for that relief from a problem, from a voice in their head, maybe from a nagging parent about something, or a friend, or anything, right? Ever hear about teens cutting themselves? Right? It's a relief. And that feeling of relief is addictive, and they do it over, they don't just do it once, just over and over and over and over again. When you see somebody's arm who's doing this, you see that on the arm, there's just maybe 10, 20, 30 cut marks. People may come to rely on effects of the substance or the behavioral abuse to bring short-term relief from difficult or painful feelings. They're not dealing with the issues, they just want to escape. And the effects of this can make problems seem less important, or make it seem easier to talk or to be with others. Make it seem like, you know what, you have no inhibition, you're not afraid, you're not awkward, you could just talk to anyone about anything, you're not worried anymore about what people think of you. People may come to believe that they cannot function or make it through the day without the substance or the behavior. They say, like, I can't function, like I need to get this, I need to do this, right? When people use substances to escape or change the way that they feel, using can become a habit which can be hard to break. It can be very difficult to break. Evil company corrupts good habits. When something is a habit, something is established in your life, but your friends, the company you keep is evil, even those habits, those well-established habits, can be gone in a matter of weeks, if not days. Continued substance abuse or behavioral abuse, especially heavy one, can cause changes in the body and the brain. And that's what we are starting to understand now. It's starting to cause changes in the body and the brain. It's not just affecting the person, making them, feel bad or socially awkward or, having a lack of attention, short attention span. It's not just that. It's literally causing changes in the body and the brain. The brain itself, once thought to be hardwired, it grows until about the age of 12, 13, and then it begins a pruning process. The brain, once thought hardwired, making all these connections, and growing in size and connections and intensity until about a certain age. And then after that age, all these areas in the brain that you don't use, like let's say you're not doing a lot of math, you're not using a lot of maybe cognitive functions. You're just focusing on, watching videos and playing video games and all. So parts of the brains that are not being used begin to die out until about the age of 25, where it's pretty much you're set. You're about as smart as you're ever going to be. Okay, you can learn new things, but you know what? The brain, all the connections that have been made or have been lost, it's more or less, that's it. But changes in the brain are still possible. Okay? Meaning that structures in the brain can change, they can atrophy, they can, get weaker. So, all this combined with substance abuse, addiction abuse, you can see that the teen brain is so vulnerable, and all of these habits can have profound effect on them, long-term effect. Okay? They may experience distressing symptoms of withdrawal. Changes to the brain may be lasting, and these changes may be why people continue to crave substances and slip back into substance use long after they have stopped, because the brain is constantly craving, and once it meets with a stressful situation or a tough day at work or whatever, it immediately goes back to that comfort zone. This is the relief. This is how I can get relief. I need to watch pornography just to get the relief. I need to take whatever medication or marijuana or whatever behavior, right? How exactly it works, and I'm not going to bore you with a lot of details, but some of the details are important for us to know, to understand the magnitude of the issue here. Okay? All drugs of abuse, as well as substance or behavioral, affect what is commonly called the reward center of the brain. The reward center of the brain is responsible for regulating your behavior. So certain behaviors are necessary for survival. You need to eat. You need to sleep. So the brain motivates you by making you, when you're hungry and you eat, you feel satisfied, you feel good. It rewards you, it says, good boy, good job. Okay? It releases a drug in the brain called dopamine, a chemical called dopamine, and it makes you feel good. Okay? And it releases it at a certain level. It's not too much. Okay? And you continue to live this way, and you're motivated to do things that will keep you alive. Okay? Sleeping is the same way. All sorts of things that are necessary for survival. Okay? When you take a drug, when you take whether substance or behavioral, this reward center is hijacked. Okay? These things work by stimulating this production of dopamine, and not just in the normal level range. They're called hyperstimuli, meaning that it is magnitudes above, like maybe 10, 15 times the normal rate of this chemical, and the reward system is just kicking into overdrive. Okay? And all sorts of things begin to happen in the brain where it can get used to this level of dopamine, and anything but this level, the brain doesn't engage. That's why you find people who are addicted to anything, when they're not engaging in these activities, they're just not on. They're not motivated, they're bored, they can't focus, they can't concentrate, because the brain is used to this level of this chemical. Anything but this, the brain is not going to engage. It's just going to go into hibernation mode. The reward system and its connecting regions modulate, among other things, pleasure, reward, memory, attention, and motivation. All the things we just discussed. Even your memory, you start not being able to remember things because that reward system is being hijacked. You can't remember things properly. Naturally occurring behaviors such as eating and drinking activate this system due to the fact that they reinforce behaviors necessary to survival, but with linkages to memory, motivation, and other circuits in the prefrontal cortex with things like, ability to make decisions and rationalize things. There are feedback mechanisms in the brain, in that system, where when you have enough of something, the brain sends a signal and says, enough, that's enough, I don't need any more, that's enough. Okay? Drug abuse, substance, behavior, they switch these feedback mechanisms, instead of saying enough, to start saying more. Okay? So you start craving and wanting more and more and more. That's why people with substance abuse always want to up the dosage. They're never satisfied with just whatever chemical, whatever drug I'm using. No, I want to use more of the drug. I want to use a harder drug. They just discovered a few months ago this drug in Winnipeg called Grey Death. It's 100 times more potent than cocaine. 100 times. People are taking it and dying. It's just extremely potent because they're always looking for a higher kick. That feeling is no longer enough. I want more and more and more and more. And that's why online pornography, for example, online pornography is very addictive in the sense it's always providing a higher level of attraction. In the sense that it always provides something new. The person, when they go on, they're always being offered new things. Okay? And that's why they keep coming back for more and more and more. And they never become satisfied with normal stimuli anymore, normal conversations, normal relationships with people. They're always used to this hyper stimuli. Even motivational hierarchies. Motivational hierarchies meaning priorities. You have your priorities. You want to spend time with your family, with your wife, with your husband. These are the priorities you have before, for example, more than going, shopping or whatever. Okay, so you have these priorities. These priorities begin to change themselves. Motivational hierarchies are altered, and addictive behaviors, which may or may not include alcohol or other drug use, supplant healthy self-care related behaviors. That's why you find people who have some sort of addiction don't take care of themselves. Whether personal hygiene, they don't eat well, they don't sleep well, all of these important things. One's very important. This guy used to take care of himself, used to be the best dressed boy in the class, or the best dressed girl, and always her hair is done, all that stuff. Once addiction kicks in, the motivational hierarchies, all these priorities are flipped. And they don't feel like they need to take care of themselves anymore, they just need to feed the addiction. Memory of previous exposures to reward, such food, sex, alcohol, other drugs, they lead to biological, behavioral response to external cues, in turn triggering craving and or engagement in addictive behaviors. So the memory of the previous experiences or exposures to the addiction triggers cravings and reinforces the bad behavior. Virtually every study done on addiction has demonstrated atrophy of multiple areas in the brain. Areas in the brain that do not support this reward center are atrophied. They're not being used. The brain is simply being used to just the areas in the brain that have to do with the reward system. Anything else dies out, begins to atrophy. Particularly those associated with frontal volitional control, so self-control, and the reward salience centers. where the centers that kind of calm down this level of dopamine in the brain, these centers are deactivated. Whether in the service of food, heroin, love, gambling, dopamine, whatever the abuse is, whatever the addiction is, it forms something. You can think of it like you're walking on a beach. You walk on a beach and the sand is kind of soft, a little bit wet. You see footprints. Okay? Now imagine things dry out. Imagine you come back 20 years later, whatever lake you're walking on, whatever beach, it's all dried out. And all you can see is this footprint in the sand, right? This trail of feet in the sand. It's hardened, it's solid, it doesn't move anymore. Essentially, that's what happens in the brain. This becomes the only way to pleasure. Nothing else can give you pleasure. Nothing else can give you satisfaction. You don't want to do anything else but feed the addiction. The brain experiences reward regardless of the source of the reward, whether it's a good source or bad, whether there are adverse consequences or not. And one of the characteristics of addiction has been the increase in desire and wanting, the increase in desire, but the decrease in liking. I really want this thing, but I don't like it. It's not satisfying me. I keep wanting it, but it's not satisfying me. During adolescence, there's an increase in the activity of the neural circuits utilizing dopamine. Okay, the reward center of the brain. Starting in early adolescence and peaking midway through, this enhanced dopamine release causes adolescents to gravitate toward thrilling activities and exhilarating sensations. So naturally, teenagers want to gravitate towards activities that are thrilling, okay? Sensations that are strong, mild sensations, things they don't really attract them, because this is what's happening in their brains at the time, right? They gravitate toward these things. Research even suggests that the baseline of dopamine is lower, but its release in response to experiences is higher. So it's released in higher levels to only these experiences, which makes teens want to engage in them more and more and more. So drugs of abuse, substance, behavior, they hijack this center of the brain. And that's why when we put a smartphone in the hands of a child, in the hands of a teen, we're essentially, we're opening the door, we're facilitating addiction. Okay? I'm not saying that every person, every teenager who has a smartphone will become an addict to something, to online pornography or social media or anything like that, but the correlation is very strong. It's very strong. It hijacks not only their words, it essentially hijacks their whole lives. They no longer have the ability to socialize with people. They don't have the practice to do it. When they meet with, like the survey showed, they spend more time on social media than with real people. So they don't know how to interact with real people. So when they meet real people, let's say somebody comes in and says, my mother just died. They don't know how to react to that. What's like the facial expression? I don't know. I know the perfect emoji that I can send, but I don't know the right facial expression. Am I supposed to do this or laugh or frown? They don't know. They haven't had any practice, right? And having smartphones really drives them deeper and deeper and deeper. But the answer isn't necessarily to just cut out technology altogether from their lives. There was this one kid, grade 1, grade 2, I was telling Abuna about. He shows up in Sunday school with a $1,000 smartphone. And when I asked him, why do you have this phone? Like an iPhone with like all this stuff. Why do you have this phone? It's like, so mom is comfortable, so she knows where I am. Okay? She needs to know where I am. I'm like, your mom didn't have a smartphone, and she's still here. Like she didn't get lost, didn't get kidnapped or anything. And anyways, like if you're in Sunday school and mom wants to check up on you and calls you, you're not going to be able to answer because you're in Sunday school. And if you're skipping Sunday school and mom calls you, you're not going to answer anyways because you don't want to get in trouble. So either ways, it doesn't make sense. Don't bring a smartphone with you. And parents, they love their children. They want to give them things maybe they didn't have, so they give them this stuff. And they give them this stuff, and as long as the kids are quiet and they're not causing trouble, the kids are good. But the problem is that the kids are quiet. And in their quietness, they're sinking deeper and deeper into deep and dark holes that we are not really aware of. Depression, loneliness, sleep deprivation, they can stay up hours on social media, very late at night. And you try to wake up in the morning, just Mom, 5 more minutes. Well, if you wanted 5, if it was just about sleep, you would have slept early. But it's not. They're able to sacrifice even the most precious thing to them, sleep, for the sake of spending a few extra minutes social media. The addiction cycle, some have defined it as a 3-step cycle. The first is binge. And this model explains actually how addiction is a neurobiochemical based shift from, and pay attention to this because it's important, impulsive action learned through positive reinforcement. So I'm hungry, I eat. I feel good. I'm hungry, so I eat. I'm thirsty, so I grab a bottle of water, I drink, I feel good. So it's an impulsive action, and I'm rewarded for it. So I know next time I'm thirsty, I'm going to drink. So it's a change from this kind of impulsive action, positively reinforced, to a compulsive action, negatively reinforced. If I don't reach for my phone, I get punished. If I don't reach for my phone, I feel pain, anxiety, fear, all sorts of things. So it's negatively reinforced compulsive actions. This in turn is seen as leading to an addictive cycle that progressively worsens over time. Things don't get better on their own. Someone who is addicted to online pornography, they're not just gonna get better on their own. They need help. And remember what we said at the beginning with stigma and all these negative ideas. They're not going to be able to access help for fear of punishment, for fear of being blamed, and all sorts of things, right? Different classes, regardless of drug or behavior, they all activate the reward center in the brain. They activate it in different ways, but they all activate it. The universal result is a flood of dopamine. And when the dopamine flood has run its course, the extended amygdala, part of the brain is activated. It's an area associated with pain processing and fear. So when they're crashed, when they're down, when the dopamine has run its course, okay, there is pain, there is fear, so it's negatively reinforcing the behavior. So they reach for it again. They want to take it again. They want to bring it in. Okay, this leads to a decreased sensitivity to reward and increase in the reward threshold. So they want more of it. This is tolerance, developing tolerance. Okay? Impairment of the brain expands beyond the reward center to the prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for motivation, self-regulation, self-control, delayed gratification, and other cognitive functions. The individual is vulnerable to reinstatement because positive and negative reinforcement of the addictive behavior, as well as stress-induced reinstatement. All this stuff is happening in the brains of our teens, and for better or for worse, we have to be aware of it. And I think at times we make it worse. We push them deeper and deeper in the addiction. No one is born an addict, unless in extreme cases, but in general, nobody's born an addict. Nobody's born addicted to a cell phone. But you give a cell phone to a 4-year-old, they'll know how to use it. Just instinctively. Just the system is very user-friendly to younger people, right? They just know how to use it. They swipe and they do all sorts of things, and they can get into, Nobody plans on being an addict, okay? There are genetic factors, okay? And there are ways that the drugs interact with the brain. There are environmental factors, but at the end of the day, mental health issues factor. Anybody has a mental health issue, any sort of addiction makes it 10 times worse. So somebody has ADHD, and they develop an addiction for whatever, for anything, for video games, it makes it 10 times worse. Okay? And since we started talking about video games, we might not know what's going on, but you need to know what's going on. Okay? In the 80s and 90s, video games were just starting to come on the scene. People were starting to make games, and they looked horrible. And kids were playing them, but they're pixelated. They're not very engaging, but kids were playing, and they were hard to set up, to connect to the TV. They're hard to get started. I remember the Atari in the mid-80s. You had to actually program the game before you play the game. It's like a 10-hour process for a 5-minute session of playtime. And it was not easy, it was not good, little chance of addiction. More and more, as processor got faster and better, the video games became easier to get into, and they became more and more immersive. They take you in the gaming environment. Now you have things that are 3D. Okay? You had the Nintendo DS, now you have the Nintendo 3DS. You have games at PlayStation 4 and Xbox One. You have games that are 3D. It's all about the gaming experience. It's all about immersing the person in the gaming world, in the virtual world. And in the virtual world, things are designed. They're designed to be whatever you want them to be. Okay? So you don't have to put up with things that you don't like in the real world. That's why people are attracted to the gaming world, to the virtual world. Okay? Part of the problem with social media and all these virtual places, they're designed. You put a picture, whatever picture you want to put, whatever image you want to portray to the world, I'm happy, I'm great. Even though inside you can feel depressed and lonely, but the picture you put on Instagram makes you look like you're having the time of your life. So you're back to the game. So what happens is, when you watch a video, the picture is not actually moving. Okay? The people on the screen, they're not actually moving. The image is not moving, it's static. What happens is that it's a frame after frame after frame, and each frame there's a small change. Okay? So it's progressing a little bit in the motion. Your brain works very hard to connect all these frames and makes it a smooth transition, smooth motion. Okay? How many of these pictures are being projected now? You have things like 1080p and 7. You have some of them are 30 frames per second, some of them are 60 frames per second. Your brain is working overtime, trying to connect all these images into a smooth video or a smooth game. Okay. After the brain is doing this, and people get addicted, they do this for like hours. And some people play for 10 hours straight. They don't go to the bathroom, they don't eat, they don't drink, they wear diapers, they have like bags on their back with water, and they can just drink, so they just don't stop, they keep going. Okay? After, I'm not going to say 10 hours, after 2 hours of playing video games, try to sit down and read a book. The brain is accustomed now to all these images, all this transition, flashing images, one after the other, after the other. Now you can ask the brain to focus on a printed word on a page that is static, that's not moving, can't read. And that's why reading is on the decline. People are not reading because of all the videos. All the time, videos. It's the image. Okay? So the brain gets used to something and is not able to function in any other way. Coping with thoughts and feelings. So these are all, I'll get to the questions at the end, but please don't forget. The whole point of addiction is about managing risk factors and positive protective factors. Okay? There are risk factors. You're probably not going to be able to completely cut out risk factors 100%. There are always going to be risk factors. Every time you send your child to school, that's a risk factor. You have no idea what's going on. For 8 hours of every day, they're spending with strangers. And then they come home, and mom is busy, and dad is busy, and kids be quiet, so the kids go into their own space again, their own room, their own phone. Okay? And so they're in another world, and they end up, the amount of time they spend with you is maybe half an hour in the whole day. Okay? Some of it is yelling. Some of it is like, after them to do something, go to your room, or go do your homework, or go clean, whatever, right? So it's about managing those risk factors and the protective factors. Okay? There are individual factors, self-concept, for example, people's concepts of themselves. Young people will grow up in a society, and with adults that accept and appreciate them, the way that they are, the way they want to be, and are more likely to feel good about themselves. And the Bible tells us, Raise your children in the way they should be, and when they're old, they're not going to depart from it. Okay? Sometimes we just have this idea of what I want my child to be, and it's tunnel vision. That's all I'm focused on. The child could be suffering, the child could be going in a different direction. Maybe they don't want to be a doctor, maybe they don't want to be a pharmacist. No. You're going to have to be this, you're going to have to do that, you're going to have to do what I have envisioned for you. Young people's ability to think positively, okay? Adaptive skills, social skills, temperament. These are all individual factors that we need to be aware of. All of these, handled properly, they move from being risk factors to being positive, protective factors. Learning strength, exposing young people to a variety of learning environments. Okay? There are family factors. Family factors is when, like I said, mom and dad, they don't spend enough time, good time, quality time with the children. We're too busy. A single family income is probably not very realistic. Most families have mom and dad working. So how much time do we really have to spend with the kids? We're working all day. I'm home exhausted, tired. We just want to, rest and prepare for the next day when we have to do it all over again. Okay. Communication. Good communication involves all family members. Talking regularly to one another. Okay. Family structure. Relations between mom and dad. Okay. Parenting style. Being warm, nurturing, loving, providing firm, clear, defined rules and the reasons for said rules. Okay? Environmental factors, being included, feeling like they're part of something. Growing up in the church is a huge positive factor, is a huge protective factor. And the religious aspect of addiction, people over and over and over again point out the fact that people who grow up without any religion in their life, without any spirituality in their life, have a huge risk factor for developing an addiction. And that's why centers like the one Mba Yusuf has in his diocese are very successful, because they don't just treat the addiction and ignore everything else. As long as we're just focused on the behavior. Don't do this anymore. Don't do it. No. They treat the person as a whole. Okay? They don't just treat the psychological part and leave the biological, the social, and the spiritual part untouched. They treat the person as a whole. They focus on everything, making sure that they restore the person. Otherwise, they just stop, but then as soon as they go back to their old environment, they're going to relapse, they're going to fall in again. So this is a quick check. If you answer 2 of these questions positive, like if you say yes to 2 of them, you should talk to someone. Have you ever tried to cut down on your substance, drinking, behavioral use? Have you ever felt angry or annoyed at someone or by someone else's comments about your substance or behavioral abuse or use, not abuse, right? Annoyed that someone is commenting like you're using your phone too much, and then you feel annoyed at that? Have you ever felt guilty about your substance or behavioral use? Have you ever used alcohol or drugs, behavior as an eye-opener? That is, first thing in the morning, first thing you wake up, okay? Now, when can people start to get help? People can start to get help at any time. There are a few myths that I'm going to be talking about, but we have to realize where we live. We immigrated here from Egypt for a better future, okay? And ironically, we immigrated here for the future of our children. And when our children are at that future and ready, for example, to go to school, some of us, especially where I come from, a lot of people send their kids back to Egypt to do medicine or to do pharmacy. So there's a little bit of irony. But here, we have to realize the culture that we came to, okay? There is a contradiction. I'm going to tell you what that is. We're trapped between 2 extremes. On the one hand, in our culture, numerous ways exist to render compulsive behavior invisible, okay? We have all these negative connotations, stigma about addiction, all sorts of things, okay? The image is very important. You can, tell people or tell someone you trust that I have a problem. You don't want them to think negatively of you. So you work very hard, and families work very hard to maintain that good, perfect, wholesome image, to the detriment of the children sometimes, just to maintain the image, right? And on the other hand, what we have is what is referred to as the culture of excess. You can do anything here, okay? There are no limits. Do whatever you want, whenever you want. So, between these two extremes, our children are living. Okay? Do I just do whatever I want or whenever I want, or do I just work very hard to keep things hidden, to maintain the image? And it's between these two extremes. Not getting proper treatment is the number one cause people don't get better. Okay? I'm going to give you a figure from drug addicts, but it applies to other areas of addiction. A total of 23.5 million people aged 12 or older needed treatment for an illicit drug or alcohol abuse in the United States in 2009. Okay? 23.5 million. That's 9.3% of people aged 12 or older. Only 11.2% of those who needed treatment received it at a specialized facility. So only 11.2% received help. Okay? And the reason is, again, there's a lot of stigma, there's a lot of fear about addiction. One of the myths is that nothing could be done until the drug addict or the addict in general, the person with the addiction, I should be referring to that like I told you at the beginning. The person with the addiction hits rock bottom. Okay? We have teens, for example, a teenager who smokes or who does drugs, and you talk to them over and over and over again, and they begin to say, you know what, he's not going to be able to change until he hits rock bottom, and that's not true. Negative consequences from substance use often do lead a young person or their parents to seek help. Treatment, another myth, is that treatment for substance use only works for those who are highly motivated. So unless that person wants to quit, they'll never be able to quit. And again, that's not really true, because motivation, it's not an intrinsic characteristic, it's fluid, okay, and it changes. And we could do things to improve it, to improve motivation, such as the way we communicate with the person about their addiction, okay? In an emphatic, warm, objective style. Promoting disclosure about addiction. Young people may be unable or unwilling to disclose their substance or behavioral use problem because they fear being judged, or they believe that they'll get punished or they'll get in trouble. So let's say that a person is aware of their problem and has started to ask for help, or to really think about changing. There are stages of change. In the pre-contemplation stage, 5 stages. The first one they call the pre-contemplation stage. They're not really aware of all the negative consequences, or they're mostly aware of the positive ones that makes them feel good, provides relief and all sorts of things. So in this stage, they're gathering information. They might need the help of the parents, for example, or the church to help them identify negative consequences to their addiction problem. Right? At this stage, nagging them about quitting might not be the best thing. They're still not fully convinced that there's anything wrong with it. Okay? In the contemplation stage, following the pre-contemplation thing, people are starting to think about changing. People can see the not so good things. However, they also see that there are good things and may feel torn between the two. And at some point, the not so good things might begin to outweigh the good things. So they need help in this stage to help them tip things in the favor of not so good things. So which means what? It means you can help them focus on the positive things in life, what they want for themselves in life. Okay? And all those negative things will begin to feel like a barrier, like an obstacle, like a heavy weight that they will feel that they want to start to get rid of. Okay? Following that is the preparation stage. That's when they set a date, they have a firm plan. This is what I'm going to do. Starting, Monday, I'm quitting smoking. No more smoking. And they have a plan. And at this stage, they need accountability and support because they're very liable to change the plan, to fall back, all sorts of things, right? The action plan is when they start the plan. And again, during this stage, they will need a lot of support. Okay? You can't really say to yourself, they're good on their own, they started quitting, I don't see them smoking anymore. Doesn't mean that they're not smoking behind your back or not falling back into the addiction behind your back. They need a lot of support. Maybe a little bit of monitoring is helpful. And then finally, after 2 to 6 months, they enter into the maintenance stage, which is less effort for them, but they do need constant support and constant encouragement to maintain that from their support system. So as we see, it's using guilt is not helpful. It doesn't help anyone to do anything. For us, being able to understand what we can do to minimize risk factors. For example, if we have teens and they have smartphones, is it a good idea to let them take their smartphones into the bedroom? Terrible idea. Probably the worst decision you can make. There's absolutely nothing that they need for survival that requires a cell phone in their bedroom, a smartphone in their bedroom. Okay? How many of us know that there are parental controls on almost all our devices, internet-enabled devices? Everything, from smartphones, smart TVs, smart fridges, everything has parental controls. You can put stuff on your modem, you can put stuff on your router, you can put stuff on the phone itself. Everything has parental controls. But honestly, how many of us use any of these features? How many of us put parental controls on the router at home? It's very easy to set up. How many actually did it? I'm guessing it's a small percentage. It's not zero, but a small percentage, right? We're allowing all this technology to infiltrate the home, but at the same time, we're not there to make sure that it's not being abused, right? We trust that this cyber nanny is going to take care, which is a name for a good parental software to keep an eye on things. That this cyber nanny is taking care of things that, the internet, they're only going to access good things. They're going to go on Netflix, but they're only going to go in the kids section. They're not going to exit and then go to the other things and watch and binge watch a whole series in like 2 days, which is very unhealthy, very destructive. Can you imagine just sitting there in front of the TV for 20 hours, just watching a whole series, not just a season, just watching a whole series. So it's very important for us to understand the magnitude of whatever it is, these things that we are bringing home. For the first 24 hours, do nothing. Do not go into your children's rooms and or just take their phones and cancel subscriptions and all sorts of things. Just watch for 24 hours. See how they interact with you. Are they really present when they're at home? Right? Are they distracted? Are they always on their phone? They're always focused on their phone? Are they spending more time on the phone than they are with you? These are very serious warning signs we need to be aware of. When our children when they have these things, it's you're trusting a person who hasn't fully developed their prefrontal cortex. The part of the brain responsible for making good decisions, it's not there. Right? You're trusting a person with something very powerful and say, use it wisely. But the part that allows them to use it wisely isn't there. So how can they use it wisely? Their brain is not able to make. The brain functions on more like impulse. Brain functions on reward seeking. It doesn't work on good decision making. Not yet. Okay? So this is very important for us to understand. There are places where we can get help. Church is always the first place I would go, simply because it's a place where there is this trusted adult, this priest that the kids have built a relationship with, that they can trust, that they can open, and they can ask. And everyone knows when to begin referring outside help and saying, maybe we need to involve medical professionals at this point, or professional help, an addiction counselor, for an assessment for something, and we'll be able to treat things properly. I would put church before family because sometimes discussing these things with family, the family panics. They don't know what to do. They haven't met these situations before, whereas Abuna has met many of these situations before, so he's not going to panic, simply for that. But if you're not going to panic, then it's definitely a good idea to approach or encourage that they approach mom and dad, and for you to understand that panic is not helpful. It's not going to help you, it's not going to help them, and don't panic, basically. There are government programs, DART, and I think they provide things mainly in Ontario, but there are similar things across Canada. We also have the Center for Addiction and Mental Health. They do a lot of research. They have a lot of clinics, again, in Ontario, and they're a top-notch facility. Okay, so any questions? So movies have ratings, okay? Movies usually have two ratings. There's a rating that comes with the movie, and there's another sticker, the Canadian rating. The Canadian rating is usually lower, okay? Something that can be rated R in the States or anywhere else. In Canada, it's rated like PG. So we need to be aware of this, okay? We need to understand that, letting the kids go to movies that are over their age is never a good idea. You're in a culture where everything is hypersexualized. You can't get a commercial for anything. A commercial for a candy bar, they use sex to sell it. A commercial for a car, they use sex to sell it. It's always like, so imagine taking them to a movie that is inappropriate for their age. You're just exacerbating the problem, making it worse. Okay? And the same thing with video games. Video games have ratings. When a video game, and many teens have games that are rated M. M is mature. Okay? These are like movies that are rated R or rated X, or the same thing. There's all sorts of nudity and violence and things that really, and a lot of teens have these games. And who buys it for them? Mom and dad. A good rule of thumb is you spend as much time with them face to face as you do with them watching. Like on-screen time and off-screen time should be equal. Okay, so if you're watching a 2-hour movie, be prepared to spend 2 hours with your kids face to face, with nothing getting in the middle, no screens, right? And so it's up to you. So it's a double-edged sword. So that's a good rule of thumb, but in general, it's about being balanced, okay, and doing things in moderation. So watching something that's 3 hours long is not going to lead them to become addicts and, doing bad in school or all that stuff. It's about moderation and long term.
The culture is also very too much
You raised very, very important points. The first one, I talked about smartphones, but applies the same with tablets or laptops. Taking any of these things in the bedroom, and especially laptops, most of them now have webcam. Okay, and they have all of these crazy apps. One of the apps I saw recently was this app where you can video conference with strangers. You just hit go, and it would connect you with someone on the app anywhere around the world, and your child is just talking with a stranger, just for the fun of it. Okay, and this I'm not going to tell you. There's all these sexual predators and all these problems. It invites a whole host of problems. The second question is really about, and I see this a lot. My kids are bored. It's not your job to entertain them. Bored is good. Okay, they're bored in school. We can work with bored. Okay, when they're bored, they learn. When they're bored, they're paying attention. When they're entertained, they're not going to learn anything. They're not going to listen to you. They're not going to do anything. So it's okay to be bored. They need to feel bored. Okay? So if they don't have something to do 24/7, something to entertain them 24/7, some of the activities they need to do is boring, that's okay. Right? So they do not need to be entertained 24/7. And don't feel bullied, because the kids will bully you. Mom, I'm bored. As soon as mom hears the kids are bored, go into a panic mode, and I have to figure out something for them to do. Just as long as they're not saying they're bored, things are okay. But bored is good. When they're bored, the attention is there. When they're bored, you can work with them. Okay? I'm not saying that it's not about getting their. You can have their attention while they're bored, but you cannot have it while they're entertained. Right? And there was a third question. There's a third question. Right? Time. Yes. Yes, of course, everything in moderation is good. But I'll tell you something, just a couple of points. First of all, not too long ago, this whole nuclear family structure where it's just mom and dad living in the city, raising the kids on their own, this family structure is pretty new. Before, it was the extended family. Most of us probably grew up with tita, giddo, uncle, tant, all these people helping raise the family. Right now, you're expected to work a full-time job as well as your husband and raise kids at the same time. Okay, so time is very limited. So there's not too much time. What are you going to do? And at the same time, we have to have an honest talk or a clear talk about priorities. Right? I need to provide for my family, but at the same time, I'm out. I'm not there. I'm not spending time with them, and things could be happening that I'm not very happy about. So it's a very tough decision, right? Saint Basil, in one of his books recently published by Saint Vladimir, it's called Social Justice. He says every time we get a raise, Saint Basil the Great, Saint Basil from our liturgy, he says every time we get a raise, we increase our standard of living, right? When I'm getting paid, let's say $1,000 a month, I'm making sure that this fits everything that all the necessities. I'm saying, I'm being thankful. I say, I don't need anything else, right? And then I get a raise, and all of a sudden this minimum standard, where the things I cannot live without, are raised. And then I get a raise. So he's saying, simplify your life so that you can share more with others. Keep things simple. We don't always have to live to the maximum extent of our ability to buy things and to spend and all that. And the reason is that time is much more valuable than money, especially time you spend with your kids. So this needs to be factored into the equation. And here, there's more than enough activities and people and things willing to take that time that the kids have to offer if you're not willing to take it. Okay? So it is a difficult decision, but this is the reality where we are. So, Abuna is raising a very important point in that I can discipline my kids and have all these rules at home, but as soon as they go out with their friends, it's a different story. Like my kids, for example, might not have a cell phone, but they have some sort of parental control on the cell phone, and they go with their friends in school, and their friends have a phone just like their phone. They can access the internet, can get anything they want, right? So it defeats the purpose. But what I want to tell you is that our struggle is not unique. Okay? I've met with many people from different cultures, even Canadians, white people, who say the same things that we say. Kids come to them and say, well, my friend, when he turned 12, his parents got him a smartphone, right? They're always making the parents feel guilty, like, you know, you're from some backwards, ancient community, and you're too Egyptian, right? And that's the same thing that happens pretty much across the board. All parents are struggling with this, and they hear the same. It's like the kids have these secret meetings, and they decide what to tell their parents. Like, well, my friend, their parents did this for him, or did. Most of the time, these stories aren't true, okay, or at least aren't complete. Yeah, my mom lets me use a phone, but it's only because I'm keeping a 95 average in school, and I'm doing all these extra stuff at home, but they don't tell that stuff. They just tell the fact, yeah, I just told my mom I'm getting a phone, and she said, okay. Right? So it's not always the case. And there are people who are spreading this other story that, you know what, sexual addiction, pornography, all that is not addictive and has no scientific basis, and there's no research that supports it, going against all the research. That when we hear something in the news and something like some sort of scientific claim that scientists have discovered this or have said that, we should always go to the research itself, to the journal, to the peer-reviewed journal itself, where the research is published. And we often see, almost always, that there's a difference between the original research and the story published in the newspaper. So definitely some community awareness is absolutely necessary. And there are a lot of people who are advocating for this. There are people who are working against it as well. But what we can do is really set standards for our homes and support these standards. It's very easy to set a standard, but when things get tough, when it's not convenient for me, I just let it go. Now I'm sending mixed messages, right? So using the internet isn't bad in of itself, as long as it's monitored properly and there are parental controls. Most schools who have Wi-Fi, they have parental controls, so they can't access most of the social media. They can't access them, and they can't access adult content. So even in school, there are limits. So it's about using them responsibly, in a responsible way. So the school gives it to them for a specific time. Even many school boards tell them to bring your own device to the classroom, okay? And they use things like the tool I used at the beginning. They use other tools to integrate the phone that they don't want to be without, to integrate it into the educational experience. So it's about using it properly, responsibly. And they're trying to teach that. I think some of the stuff is good. And it doesn't necessarily go against what we're trying to set, the standards we're trying to set at home. That you have to use it responsibly. It's not about not using it at all. It's about using it responsibly, accessing the proper content. Like St. Paul said, nothing is lawful. It's about what's appropriate, what's inappropriate to the calling that we've been given. Thank you so much. Thank you, Abuna and Abuna. طولت عليكم. He's very smart, first of all. He's going with you to the end. He's like, Dad, what do you want me, what can I do? And then you give him things to do. He's like, okay, and he does them. And says, now what? And he keeps again and again. Like I said, it's not your responsibility to entertain them. Don't be bullied into thinking that, and they bully us many times. Don't be pushed into thinking that you have to entertain them, and if they are bored, then you failed as a parent. You did not fail as a parent if they're bored. If they're bored, this is okay. As long as we balance on-screen time with off-screen time. Off-screen time is correlated with happy, balanced kids. On-screen is correlated with depressed, lonely kids. Those are the trends, right? So as long as do whatever you want, but off-screen. When we take the kids, for example, in church, and they play basketball in the gym, say, okay, it's time to go to Sunday school. They don't tell you, okay, well, I played basketball, and now it's time for Sunday school. Like, I want to play more basketball. Okay? So if your son, for example, go play sports, and if he wants to play sports, and now he's like, Dad, okay, I went and I played sports. He's like, he's playing that game, I played sports, now what? Well, play more sports. And then after you're done, play some more. You know what I mean? So don't let them, corner you into having to say, okay, fine, just go play with your tablet, right? And you can set screen time on the tablet as well. That put a profile on it and set a limit. You're only allowed 30 minutes a day. After that, it just locks. And you can do the same thing on your router. This device connected to this router is allowed access to the internet only 30 minutes a day, for example, right? And after 30 minutes, it disconnects. It doesn't matter if they're in the middle of whatever, an application to NASA, and they're going to take them into space. 30 minutes is over, it's over. Okay? Dad, I need the internet in my room because I need to do homework. I have a project with my friends. They always have projects with their friends. And they always need computers, the latest gadgets and phones to do projects, to do homework. You don't want me to do homework, you want me to fail? Right? So they're playing the game and not intentionally being, evil or malicious or anything, but they know that these are the buttons I need to press to get Dad to do what I want him to do. So don't feel like you're in a corner or you're alone or that you're a bad parent if you don't. Make sure that balance between on-screen and off-screen time.
بدل ما تحاول ان انت تمنع، حاول ان انت تديله اكتيفيتي تشغله اكتر. بس هي مشكلتنا ان احنا دايما بنحاول نجيب، احنا we trying to compete the video game او السيلفون او الانترنت بصفه عامه، الميديا. Nothing attractive more than the internet. Nothing attractive. ودي غلطتنا دايما كلنا. لكن احنا ممكن نخليه يشغله ان وقته يبقى يوسف، مش لازم يبقى كله بليجر. You cannot compete the video game او الانترنت. هم نفسه compete itself. يعني كان يطلع الفيسبوك وبعدين بعد كده لقوا انه كان الناس بتحط كلام كتير، طلعوا تويتر وبعدين طلعوا الانستجرام وبعدين سناب شات. هم بينافسوا بعضهم، انت مش هتقدر تنافسهم. لكن تعلم ولاد من ابنك من صغره انه يبقى how to organize his time to make you useful، مش بليجر. لان البليجر بتاع الانترنت كده. نقطه ثانيه ابونا نبهنا لها، ودي حتى ابونا نبه لها حته موضوع لما يوسف، انه مش بس نمنع، لا ده احنا بنعالج الانسان كله كأزبور، يعني ده مهم. النقطة الثانية المهمة برضو انه من زمان كنا بنقول لكل واحد، ده من عصر الانترنت الكبير، انه ما ياخدوش معاه في برايفت بليس. يعني دايما حتى لما يجي واحد يقول لي ابونا انا بتحارب مثلا بورنوجرافي بقى، يعني اي حاجة يعني، واقول له طب اول حاجة انت عرفت نفسك ان انت ضعيف للنقطة دي، زي واحد ضعيف للهواء والبرد بيجي له كاتش كولد فيري ايزلي، بيعمل ايه؟ بيقفل الشبابيك. ما تاخدش، افتح دايما الانترنت، ده للكبار بالصغيرين، افتح الانترنت دايما في بابليك بليس، في الصاله، ما تاخدوش جوه اوضتك. لان ده احنا كنا زمان نقول من قبل ما يعملوا دراسات يعني خالص في الموضوع ده، والبابا شنودة كان يقول اذا كنت هتنكسف من الناس هاو ماتش مور اي شود بي، هنكسف من ربنا. فاذا كنت هنكسف افتح حاجه زي كده قدام الناس، اي حد حتى ولو معايا في البيت، طب امال هنكسف قد ايه اكتر من ربنا؟ فمش شرط انه لازم يبقى الوقت اتراكتيف قوي، يعني ان انا عايز اجيب له حاجه تغليه وتشغله وتخليه يكره الانترنت، ده مش هيحصل. لكن لو اتعود من صغره، وعلى فكره الولاد هنا مش شرط، طبعا هو في الادكشن كتير، لكن مش شرط ان هو بيستعمل كل وقته على الانترنت في حاجات وحشه، عشان ما تخافوش يعني ازاي زي ما دايما بنقول حتى في الكنيسه، المادة أو الجهاز مش هي الغلط، لكن بتستعمله في إيه هو الغلط، هو اللي ممكن يبقى. نشكر أبونا كتير. طبعا دي نقطة مهمة، إنه زي الأكل، يعني الأكل مش وحش، الأكل مش حرام ولا غلط، بس لما أفضل أكل كتير عشان كده بنصوم ونعمل كنترول على نفسنا، فبندربه من صغره إزاي يعمل كنترول حتى في الحاجة الحلوة اللي ما فيهاش ضرر. يعني فيديو جيم نظيف ما فيهوش حاجة، يقعد بس 3-4 ساعات ده وما يقدرش يبطل، ده عيب كبير. أعلمه إن أنا إزاي كنترول ماي سيلف، زي ما كنترول الأكل إيتنج وفورجيت وعناية. نشكر أبونا بول كتير على محبته، وأعتقد إن هو، بس أنا خايف إن أنتوا الأوتيل يقفل على شنطكم، وهتلاقوا إن الأوض ممكن المفتاح الإلكترونيك اللي في إيديكم ما يفتحش، وتضطروا تكسروا الباب وتدفعوا ثمن الباب. نشكر أبونا بول جدا.